welcome. My name is Deborah Ethwin Arbenlow, and I'm a blogger and photographer for Second Life. Today I'm going to show you the components that you'll need to create an image that looks like you are looking into a mirror. So on the screen I have a censored version of an image that I took about a month ago of the Catwa head Laura, and this is using a mirror image technique. So what you need to create the mirror image effect is you need two images of your avatar on a green screen or using the layer mask method of the front and back. You're going to want them in approximately the same kind of angle. So I have here a front and a back of my avatar. So I want to take these images and I want to put them into this image, and I have created a base that works for the image. So what I do is, let's disappear these images real quick. Medical boob. Okay, so for this image, what I end up doing is I start out, let's just take all these away. I start out with sort of a generic stock image that I've modified to remove some parts of the wall, and I've added a shadow here on the background. You don't have to add shadows, but it helps. So I have a frame here that I used to add this effective, like, sort of poster that works with my image. You can put anything you want, and you can even have a blank wall. You don't have to actually add anything to it. So I use these things to create an environment of realness around my photo. But basically you could even do this on a blank wall if you wanted to. So I have my wall, and then to it I add other portions. I have to add the mirror, I have to add the image that's behind the mirror, so what the reflection would see, and I have to, of course, add my avatars. So I have my mirror frame that I have here, and you can get a stock mirror frame from royalty-free images. You can even Google and then use Google search tools to narrow down your images to images that are available for reuse, for non-commercial reuse. So if you're not making any money off of your images, you can use non-commercial reuse images. Okay, so I've got my mirror frame here, and then to my mirror frame I also add a background image. So the original image that I used was, let me just make this invisible. So I used like a hospital bed generic image that I have blurred, and then for this image I can add any kind of image I want. But basically you want to crop your image into the mirror frame. So all you really have to do is cut the parts that don't fit into it, and then you've got your background image. So in order to create the depth of field look, just like in some of my previous tutorials, I've taught you to use the lens blur effect. So if you go to blur, filter, and then blur, and then lens blur, you can lens blur the layer to create the effect that you want. So you just click OK when you use the lens blur effect. So all you do is take an image of a similar tone that fits with your theme to create whatever background you want to see. So if you're looking in a mirror and you want to see the back of a bathroom, you need to take a shot in Second Life of a bathroom or find a royalty frame image of a bathroom, and then you add that lens blur to it and crop it into your mirror frame. So I've cropped this image into my mirror frame, and then I also need to add a glass to my mirror. So let's put in my avatar first so that you can see. So I'm going to take my image. I've already removed the background, so I have my front image. And of course for your mirror, the size of your image, as in the amount of avatar in your image, will depend on your image. So if you want to see your whole avatar in your image, take a whole picture of your front avatar and a whole picture of your back avatar. For me, I'm just doing my upper body, so I took an upper body shot of front and back. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hit Control A and then Control C copies, and then I'm going to go paste it into this image here. So I'll paste it. So now I have this. It doesn't quite match in tone, so I can always go Control U, maybe desaturate it a little. You want it to be approximately the same tones, undertones as your image. So if your avatar is warm and your image is cool, it's going to look a little bizarre. It won't really match. So if you want to have a realistic image, make sure your background tones and your avatar tones are very similar. So cool environment, cool avatar, warm environment, warm avatar. And you can edit them in Photoshop to make them warmer or cooler in both respects. I can't speak today. Okay, so I have my image here, and then I want to add glass to it. So here's a little glass. So what I did is I just bought a glass texture from I think I got it from iStock. I bought a glass texture that has these lines. But also you could just use a gradient, or you could just use, you could paint the lines yourselves. But you basically want to have a sheer gray, blue in different shades of a bunch of lines or a gradient to create a glass effect. But really, honestly, it was much easier to just buy a glass, transparent glass file than it is to try and make them, because it takes a long time and it's just not fun. So I would suggest that you either purchase one, or if you can find one that's royalty free, that's great too. But you could also go and try and make one. So this kind of effect, where it's sheer and it has different color gray, blue lines, will create the effect. So you can see on my avatar, it makes it look like it's behind that mirror. And you can probably find even more realistic ones, but the one I bought was really cheap. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but it wasn't a lot. So I've got that, and then I also want to add the back of my avatar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab the back of my avatar image. I'll hit Control A to copy, or sorry, Control A to select, Control C to copy. Or you can also just use your edit menu here, copy, paste, all of that. Alright, so I've copied my back image. So now I'm going to paste it up into this image. And then I want to make it so that I can see the reflection. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of move it. So I'll hold Shift when I move it so that I don't move it too weird. And of course I want to have this above my image there. You want to have your back image of your back be probably the uppermost layer. And then I'm going to resize it so that it looks like I'm looking at myself. So what I typically do is I'm going to resize this. I'm going to hold Shift so that it resizes all the same. So what I usually do is I put it slightly off center so that it looks like I'm staring at myself. And sometimes you're going to need to make it even bigger, like I do. So this is really something that ends up being sort of a, you have to know what you're looking to see in your final effect. So I've got my avatar here, and I'm staring at myself. Let's see if we can. That looks about right. This is trial and error, or just sort of knowing what you want it to look like. So I've got this back image, but what I want to do is I want to blur my back image so that it creates a depth of field look. So the focus of my image is my reflection. So I'm going to go and do another lens blur to blur this back image. So I'm going to go to blur, and I'm going to go to lens blur. And one of the reasons that you want to have your image bigger rather than smaller, because I could have zoomed in and taken an image of just that portion of my avatar, but when you lens blur, sometimes the edges start to get a little frayed in the blurred areas. So if you don't have enough space to work with of your image, your back image, you may end up having some problems after you blur it, where the lines at the edges of your photo don't look quite right. You always want to have your lens blur edges, like the edges of the lens blurred image, be bigger than your photo. That way you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, so now I've blurred my image. It looks a little funny around the edges, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my quick select tool here, and I'm going to quick select the areas around it. I'll select the inverse, and then I'm going to refine the edge a little. And not too much, so I'm just going to refine that edge a little bit and see how it looks. And more trial and error usually. So now I'll click my layer mask tool. So I've refined my edge, selecting it, and then I'm going to click layer mask down here. And then, let's see. It may or may not look better without. So let's disable that layer. It doesn't really look any different. It's fine. Alright, so I've got this reverse image. I need to desaturate it a little. It's a little too warm. So I'm going to desaturate it a little so that it sort of matches my effect. And you create a basic image that looks like you've got that reverse going on. So let me actually put this back up. So now I have a mirror image sort of effect. So it's not an exact science, just like everything else that I do, but you can resize your avatar as needed to feel like you've got the effect that you want. Oh, I've messed that up. I can't do that. Let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So now you have that sort of mirror image effect, and you can do this in full size, and you can do this in portrait size, pretty much anything you want. All you do is you change your background to fit whatever you're trying to do. So I did a shot of in front of a ballet, on a ballet bar in front of a mirror. So I took a shot of my whole body from back and front and created that sort of effect. But basically all it ends up being is putting together a scene, putting a transparent glass over the main image of your avatar, and then having a lens blurred depth of field effect on the back image. So it's not so difficult to do the project, it just takes a lot of time to create these kinds of images. The original image that I showed you here probably took me, I want to say, at least 3 hours to create that environment, to create that realistic sort of effect. And it's not something for the faint of heart. If you want to do like a quick shot, this is not the kind of image that you want to do, because you will spend a lot of time setting up your environment, and you will spend a lot of time perfecting your placement to really make it look realistic. And there's a lot of ways that this can go wrong, a lot of ways that this can look unrealistic. Even this image that I did here, just because of the nature of the shots that I did, this sort of hair and this angle of my shoulder is not the most natural look. So my original look was actually quite a bit more natural. So let me pull it up. The original look here was more natural than this look. And so this was a lot more natural. It looked better because I had the whole shoulder here. So this sort of effect, you're going to need to sort of try some trial and error before you have it. I would suggest doing this when you have a lot of time to really test it out and see how you feel about it. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope that it was helpful, at least in education. It's a little bit off the map for me to do one that takes this much explanation, but I did get a request for this. So hopefully, my requester, I hope that this has helped you figure out how to create these kinds of images for yourself. And thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. You can send them to me on Plurk, Flickr, or in Second Life. And I'll catch you next time.